Truckers see plenty of strange things on America's back roads. But what happened at Rusty's Junction that autumn night changed everything. A small roadside diner became the last place three outlaw bikers wanted to be when they chose to intimidate a driver who'd spent 15 years in Army Special Forces. They had no idea he specialized in close-quarters combat, and they certainly didn't expect the entire diner to stand behind him. By sunrise, these three bikers would learn why some truckers are better left alone. The autumn wind whistled through the pines as Mike Sawyer conducted his pre-trip inspection at Rusty's Junction. His weathered hands moved methodically over his Kenworth W900's vital components, each touch a conversation with the machine he'd trusted for over 800,000 miles. The chrome finish of his rig reflected the dim parking lot lights, its surface collecting the evening mist that rolled in from the surrounding forest. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The small roadside diner, perched where Route 43 met the interstate, hummed with the usual evening activity. Steam rose from coffee cups, and the aroma of Lucy's famous meatloaf mixed with diesel fumes in the crisp October air. Inside, regulars occupied their usual spots, some reading papers, others swapping stories about road conditions and weather forecasts. Outside, a handful of trucks idled softly in the growing darkness, their running lights casting long shadows across the gravel lot. Mike checked his load of automotive parts bound for Detroit, having run this route twice monthly for the past 5 years. Other drivers called him Shadow, quiet, professional, and always on time. His military bearing never quite faded, even after trading his Special Forces uniform for a trucker's cap. 15 years in the Army's most elite units had taught him to read situations before they developed, to sense trouble before it announced itself. A young driver named Tommy struggled with his trailer brakes nearby, muttering under his breath. Mike watched for a moment, then walked over, his boots crunching on the loose gravel. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice carrying the quiet authority that came from years of leading men in combat. Tommy looked up, relief visible on his face. "Can't get these brakes to release right," he admitted. Mike knelt beside the mechanism, his hands working with practiced efficiency as he explained the proper procedure to the rookie. The sound of motorcycles broke through the peaceful evening air. 3 distinct engines, their aggressive growls cutting through the usual truck stop symphony. Mike's posture shifted slightly, muscle memory from years of combat training taking over. He continued helping Tommy, but his senses heightened, cataloging every detail of his surroundings. The young driver noticed the change in Mike's demeanor and followed his gaze toward the approaching sounds. Through the diner's windows, Lucy herself paused while refilling coffee cups. 15 years of running this place had taught her to read trouble before it walked through the door. Her regular customers, mostly veteran drivers who'd navigated America's highways for decades, maintained their conversations but subtly adjusted their positions, an unconscious response to potential threat that came from years on the road. The motorcycles pulled into the lot, their LED headlights harsh against the gentle glow of the diner's neon sign. The engine's rumble echoed off the building's weathered walls before falling silent. 3 riders dismounted, all wearing patches identifying them as members of the Road Reapers, a small but notorious group known for causing trouble along the eastern shipping routes. Their leather vests bore other patches too, ones that spoke of violence and intimidation. Their leader, a tall man with a salt and pepper beard and a scarred face, surveyed the lot like he owned it. His eyes lingered on Mike's rig, noting its immaculate condition, the veteran sticker on the bumper, and the Special Forces emblem barely visible in the corner of the windshield. His 2 companions, younger, eager, with the hungry look of men who enjoyed causing pain, spread out slightly, unconsciously adopting tactical positions. Inside, conversation quieted, but didn't stop. The regulars, truckers who'd seen their share of trouble on America's highways, maintained their routines but shifted almost imperceptibly in their seats. Messages started flowing through phones and CB radios, the trucking community's own early warning system activating. "Heads up on Channel 19, one driver murmured into his handset. "Got some unwanted company at Rusty's." Mike finished helping Tommy, his movements unhurried but precise. "Get inside," he said quietly to the younger driver. "Some situations are better watched from a distance." Through his side mirror, he watched as the bikers swaggered toward the diner, but not before their leader made a show of running his hand along the side of Mike's truck, leaving a deliberate smudge on the polished surface. Their eyes met briefly in the reflection, a wordless exchange that carried the weight of promised confrontation. Lucy's hand moved beneath the counter, where she kept a baseball bat that had seen use exactly twice in 15 years. The regulars maintained their positions, but there was a new tension in the air. These weren't the usual rough types that occasionally passed through. There was something different about these three, something that spoke of real malice rather than simple troublemaking. As the bikers disappeared into the diner, Mike completed his inspection with practiced precision. He'd seen their type before, both in combat zones and on civilian roads. They were predators looking for easy prey, testing boundaries to see who'd push back. His hand brushed against the side of his cab, feeling the familiar texture of the truck that had become more than just transportation. It was his home, his livelihood, and if necessary, his fortress. The night was just beginning at Rusty's Junction, but already the pieces were being set in motion. Mike checked his logbook, made his final notations, and settled in to wait. Sometimes, as he'd learned in special forces, the hardest part was knowing exactly when to make your move. Through the windows, the three bikers claimed a corner booth, their loud voices and aggressive laughter cutting through the diner's usual evening peace. But they didn't notice how the other patrons stayed put, coffee cups never quite emptying, eyes alert beneath casual expressions. They didn't realize that Rusty's Junction wasn't just another truck stop, it was a community, and they were about to learn what that really meant. A tense hour passed at Rusty's Junction as the evening deepened into night. Inside the diner, the three road reapers had claimed their corner booth, their voices growing louder with each passing beer. Their leader, who called himself Razor, kept watching the parking lot through the window, particularly Mike's pristine Kenworth. The other two bikers, introduced as Snake and Diesel, made a show of harassing Lucy whenever she approached their table. Lucy worked with practiced efficiency, her movements calm, but her eyes sharp. 20 years of managing a roadside diner had taught her to read trouble like an approaching storm. She'd seen the way Razor watched Mike's rig, the calculated malice behind his casual glances. When she approached their table to refill their beers, Razor looked up, his scarred face twisting into what might have been a smile. "Friendly place you got here," he drawled, eyes still tracking movement in the parking lot. "Real friendly." "We try to be," Lucy replied, her voice carrying just the right mix of professional courtesy and careful distance. "Might be staying a while," Razor said, drumming his fingers on the table. "Good spot for business." The word hung in the air like smoke, heavy with implication. Lucy topped off their glasses without comment, but her mind was already racing. She'd heard rumors about the road reapers, about their business practices along the eastern routes. Small group, but vicious, known for targeting specific drivers, specific cargo. Outside, Mike's CB radio crackled to life. "Shadow, you copy? Got movement at marker 87. The voice belonged to Big Jim, a veteran driver who ran night routes." Mike picked up the handset. "Copy that. What's the word?" "Local boys spotted another bike heading your way. Looks like backup." "Understood. Keep your eyes open." The conversation triggered a memory from his deployment. A hot day in Kandahar province, watching insurgents slowly surround a forward operating base. The same patient, predatory approach. Mike's hand unconsciously touched the combat knife he always kept within reach, a habit from his special forces days. A young waitress hurried out of the diner, her face tight with concern. She made a beeline for Mike's truck, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Mr. Sawyer," she kept her voice low, "Lucy asked me to tell you they're asking questions about Detroit routes, especially the automotive shipments." Mike nodded slowly, the pieces starting to fit together. The road reapers had a reputation for precision targeting, not random hijackings, but carefully selected cargo. His mind drifted back to another memory, this one from his final tour. His unit had been ambushed while moving sensitive equipment, the attackers somehow knowing exactly what they were carrying. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The diner's door swung open, and Razor emerged with Snake and Diesel. They moved with deliberate slowness, taking in every detail of the truck stop. Another motorcycle rumbled into the lot, its rider wearing the same Road Reapers patch. Mike watched through his side mirror as Razor approached his rig, the biker's reflection growing larger. A knock on the driver's side door broke the tension. "Nice rig," Razor called up. "Military man, huh?" Mike rolled down his window partway. "Something I can help you with?" "Just being neighborly." Razor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Heard you run Detroit routes. Automotive parts, right? Valuable cargo these days." "Just doing my job." "Jobs can be dangerous these days." Razor ran a hand along the truck's polished surface. "Lot of hijackings on these roads. Shame if anything happened to such a nice rig." The threat was clear, but Mike's expression remained neutral. He'd faced down worse in combat situations. "Appreciate the concern." More motorcycles arrived, their engines echoing off the buildings. The Road Reapers were establishing a presence, marking their territory. Inside the diner, Lucy was already on the phone, her voice low and urgent as she spoke with the local sheriff. The trucking community had its own way of responding to threats. Drivers who had been preparing to leave found reasons to delay their departures. Others who hadn't planned to stop suddenly needed fuel or maintenance. Mike's phone buzzed with a text from Ray Chen, a fellow veteran who ran security at Detroit Motors. "Word is these guys have been hitting parts shipments up and down the coast. 3 companies hit last month. Watch yourself, brother." The message confirmed Mike's suspicions. The Road Reapers weren't random troublemakers. They were organized, targeting specific shipments. Rusty's Junction's location made it a perfect staging ground for their operations. Razor and his crew mounted their bikes, but not before the leader cast one final look at Mike's truck. "See you around, soldier boy. Keep that rig shiny." They roared away into the darkness, their taillights disappearing around the bend. But Mike knew they weren't gone. They were just getting started. As night settled over Rusty's Junction, Lucy gathered a small group of trusted regulars in her back office. The cramped room, usually reserved for paperwork and inventory counts, had become an impromptu command center. Mike Sawyer leaned against the filing cabinet, his military training evident in the way he positioned himself with clear sightlines to both doors. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across concerned faces as they assessed their situation. "Sheriff Thompson's on alert," Lucy reported, hanging up her landline, the old rotary phone a reminder of simpler times. "But he's short-handed. Says there's not much he can do unless they actually break the law." She passed Mike a fresh coffee, her hands slightly trembling, not from fear but from anger at seeing her community threatened. "They're testing boundaries," Mike replied, his mind already working through tactical scenarios. "This isn't their first operation. The way they moved, the questions they asked, they're professionals hiding behind biker patches. I've seen this pattern before, back in the service. Small groups creating chaos to mask organized operations." Big Jim, a former Marine turned long-haul driver, spread out a road map on Lucy's desk. Coffee stains and worn creases marked the well-used paper, red circles highlighting recent incidents. "Got word from 3 other stops along Route 43. These guys have been mapping routes, gathering intel. They're building something bigger than just random hijackings. Look at the pattern. They're focusing on major automotive supply lines." Mike's phone buzzed with another message from Ray Chen. "Confirmed hits on automotive shipments. All high-value parts, all precision-timed. They had inside information on shipping schedules, cross-referencing with recent thefts in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Same MO, same targeting pattern." The implications sent a chill through the room. Through the office window, partially obscured by old Venetian blinds, they could see more motorcycles arriving, small groups of 2 or 3, establishing a presence along the access road. The Road Reapers were building their net, piece by piece, each new arrival carefully positioned for maximum coverage. Earl, a retired state trooper who now drove regional routes, pointed out security camera blind spots on a rough sketch of the truck stop. They're professional about it, staying just outside camera range while maintaining line of sight to all major approaches. That's trained surveillance behavior. Tommy, the young driver Mike had helped earlier, burst into the office, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. They just hit Pete's rig over on Route 87, stripped his whole trailer of electronics. He's in the hospital. They worked him over pretty bad when he tried to resist. Doc says he's got 3 broken ribs and a concussion. The news rippled through the room like a shockwave. Pete was well-liked, a 20-year veteran of the roads who'd never missed a delivery. This was an escalation, a message to the community. Mike's phone lit up with texts from his old Special Forces unit. "Heard you've got trouble. Delta team standing by. Give the word." He typed back, "Not yet, but stay ready. This feels bigger than we thought." Lucy slumped into her chair, the ancient springs creaking under the weight of the situation visible in her shoulders. Sheriff Thompson's hands are tied, says without direct evidence he can't move against them. They're too smart for that. Left no traces at Pete's scene, professional cleanup job. Through the window, they watched Razor talking on his phone, gesturing with obvious authority. More bikes arrived, their riders showing deference to the leader. The hierarchy was becoming clear. This wasn't just a gang. It was a military-style operation using biker culture as cover. "They're setting up distribution networks," Mike explained, years of combat intelligence experience clicking into place. "Using legitimate trucking routes as cover. We're just the first phase. They need a secure staging area for bigger operations. Look at how they're positioning themselves, controlling access points, establishing observation posts. This is straight out of the insurgency playbook." Lucy's expression hardened as she watched another group of bikes roll in. "This is our home, Mike, our community. Some of these drivers have been stopping here for 20 years. I've watched their kids grow up, celebrated their victories, mourned their losses. We're not just some waypoint on a map." "I know." Mike's voice carried the weight of experience. "And we're not giving it up without a fight. They think they're dealing with isolated targets, but they don't understand what community really means." The office door opened, and Ray Chen himself walked in, having driven straight from Detroit after hearing about the situation. His security badge from Detroit Motors still hung from his neck, a reminder of the corporate interests at stake. "Got something you need to see." He pulled out his tablet, showing security footage from recent hijackings. The precision of the operations was military grade, each movement choreographed with professional efficiency. The night was getting deeper, but at Rusty's Junction a resistance was forming, built on bonds stronger than fear, ready to show 3 bikers why you don't underestimate a united community. Dawn approached Rusty's Junction with an eerie calm. Mike Sawyer observed from his Kenworth as the first hints of sunlight painted the sky in shades of purple and orange. 3 hours had passed since the meeting in Lucy's office, and the situation had evolved in concerning ways. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the gravel, their pale glow mixing with the approaching daylight. Through his driver's side mirror, he watched the Road Reapers' surveillance pattern. They'd established rotating patrols, 2 bikes circling the access roads every 15 minutes, maintaining radio contact with Razor. Their professionalism was evident in every movement, every position change. These weren't amateur thugs. They were trained operators using biker culture as camouflage. Mike had seen similar tactics in combat zones, small units establishing control through calculated intimidation. "Shadow, you copy?" Big Jim's voice crackled over the CB. "Got movement on the west approach. 2 more bikes, different patches. Looks like they're calling in friends. These boys are running tactical formations. Staggered approach, maintaining visual contact." Mike keyed his radio. "Copy that. Keep eyes on but maintain distance. Any sign of support vehicles?" He watched as 2 new motorcycles rolled into the lot, their riders wearing patches from the Iron Legion, another small but violent group known for precision hits on cargo shipments. The new arrivals moved with the same military precision he'd noticed in the Road Reapers. Lucy emerged from the diner, 2 coffee cups in hand. She climbed up to Mike's cab, her movements casual but her eyes scanning for watchers. The morning mist swirled around her boots as she approached. "They've been asking questions," she said quietly, passing him a cup. "About scheduling. about which drivers run regular routes. They're building profiles. One of them was taking notes, professional observations, not just random intimidation. Inside the diner, the morning shift was starting. Regular customers mixed with truckers who'd found reasons to delay their departures. Every face was familiar to Mike. Veterans, experienced drivers, members of a community that understood the importance of standing together. He noticed how they positioned themselves with clear views of exits and entrances, an unconscious defensive formation born from years of experience. Ray Chen's voice came through Mike's encrypted phone line. Just got intel from Detroit. 3 more parts suppliers hit last week. The pattern's expanding. They're not just after automotive components anymore. They're targeting specific electronics, specialized tools. Cross-reference the hit locations. They're building a supply chain map. Someone's building something big, and they're willing to spill blood to get it. Mike processed this information as he watched Razor emerge from the motel across the street. The biker leader moved with military precision, his eyes constantly scanning, assessing. 2 more Road Reapers flanked him, Snake and Diesel, their casual swagger masking trained movements. Mike recognized the formation. It was the same one he'd used countless times in urban combat situations. "Your friend Pete's awake," Lucy added, her voice tight with concern. "Doctor says he recognized one of his attackers. Ex-military contractor. These guys aren't just bikers playing soldier." Pete said they knew exactly what they were looking for, had manifests, shipping codes. This goes deeper than we thought. Through the lot's security cameras, monitored on Ray's tablet, they watched as Razor coordinated with the new arrivals from the Iron Legion. The collaboration confirmed Mike's suspicions. This was an organized operation with connections beyond local biker gangs. The way they established perimeters, maintained communication channels, and coordinated movements spoke of professional training. "They're building a network," Mike explained, pointing out positioning patterns to Lucy. "Using multiple groups to mask their real operation. Small gangs like the Road Reapers provide cover, while professional operators handle the precision hits. Classic insurgency tactics. I saw the same thing in Afghanistan. Legitimate businesses used as fronts for larger operations." His phone buzzed with a message from his old Special Forces team. "Satellite imagery shows increased activity at abandoned warehouses along Route 43. Multiple vehicles, professional security. Thermal scans indicate regular movement patterns. Something big's brewing, brother. You need us there?" Lucy watched another pair of bikes roll in, their riders taking up predetermined positions around the lot's perimeter. Her expression hardened as she observed their practiced movements. "Sheriff Thompson's playing it safe. Says without proof of direct criminal activity, his hands are tied. Meanwhile, these bastards are turning my truck stop into their private staging ground." The morning sun continued its ascent, casting new shadows across Rusty's Junction as the community prepared to face a threat that was growing more complex by the hour. What had started as simple intimidation by 3 bikers was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous, and they were right in the middle of it. The tension at Rusty's Junction reached its first breaking point as the morning sun climbed higher. Mike Sawyer watched from his Kenworth as Razor and his crew made their move, their growing confidence evident in every swagger. The 3 original Road Reapers, now backed by their Iron Legion allies, had decided it was time to establish dominance. Through his side mirror, Mike observed Razor approaching a newer driver's rig, a blue Peterbilt piloted by a man barely out of his 20s. The biker's intentions were clear in his predatory stride. Behind him, Snake and Diesel spread out in a practiced flanking maneuver, while their new allies maintained perimeter watch with military precision. "Last chance to do this the easy way," Razor's voice carried across the lot. "Protection fees are reasonable, lot cheaper than replacing a whole rig." The young driver stood his ground, but Mike could see the fear in his stance, the uncertainty in his movements. Lucy's voice crackled over the secure channel Ray had set up. "Mike, he's just a kid. Been driving this route for 3 months. Name's Danny." Mike's tactical assessment took seconds. The Road Reapers had chosen their target carefully. Young, inexperienced, isolated. They were establishing a precedent, showing the consequences of resistance. Classic insurgent tactics. "Time to move," Mike keyed his radio. "Big Jim, you in position?" Roger that, Shadow. Got your back. Mike stepped down from his truck, his movements measured, deliberate. 15 years of Special Forces training guided every step as he approached the confrontation. Razor turned at the sound of Mike's boots on gravel, his scarred face twisting into a sneer. Well, well. The soldier boy wants to play hero. Razor's hand drifted toward his vest, where Mike had already noted the outline of a concealed weapon. Snake and Diesel shifted positions, their movements betraying professional training. Walk away. Mike's voice carried the quiet authority that had once commanded elite units. This isn't a road you want to travel. Razor's laugh was sharp, mirthless. 3 of us, 1 of you, soldier boy. Math ain't in your favor. Might want to check that math again. Big Jim's voice rang out. The former Marine had positioned himself on the far side of Danny's rig, covering the blind spot in the Road Reapers formation. More truck doors opened across the lot as other drivers emerged. Veterans, mostly. Men and women who recognized the taste of coming violence. Through the diner's windows, Lucy had her phone ready, recording everything. The bikers' Iron Legion backup shifted uneasily, recognizing the tactical disadvantage they hadn't noticed developing. What had seemed like an easy intimidation play had transformed into a potential combat situation. Last warning, Mike said quietly, his stance relaxed but ready. There are 2 kinds of men in this world. Those who know when they're outmatched, and those who learn the hard way. Razor's response was a blur of motion, a practiced draw that had probably worked dozens of times before. But he wasn't facing an ordinary trucker. Mike moved with the fluid precision of thousands of combat drills, closing distance even as Razor's hand cleared his vest. The next 10 seconds demonstrated why some truckers are better left alone. Mike's first strike disabled Razor's weapon hand. The second redirected the biker's momentum into a controlled takedown. Snake and Diesel moved to intervene, but Big Jim was already there, his Marine Corps training evident in his economy of motion. The Iron Legion riders started forward, but froze at the sound of multiple truck engines roaring to life. The lot had become a choreographed display of community power, rigs positioned to cut off escape routes, experienced drivers moving with coordinated purpose. Ray Chen's voice cut through the tactical channel. Local police incoming. 2 minutes out. Everything's on camera. Mike kept Razor pinned, using minimum force but maintaining absolute control. The biker leader's training showed in how he tested for weaknesses, but Mike's grip was informed by years of combat experience. You have no idea what you're getting into, Razor spat, his professional demeanor cracking. We're just the beginning. There's something bigger coming, something you can't stop. Maybe, Mike acknowledged, maintaining pressure. But it's not coming through here. Police sirens wailed in the distance as Lucy emerged from the diner, phone held high, recording everything. The Road Reapers' backup melted away, motorcycles starting up and disappearing down side roads. They were professionals after all, no point in unnecessary exposure. Sheriff Thompson's deputies arrived to find a carefully contained situation. Razor and his 2 original crew members were detained while Mike and the other drivers gave statements that matched the video evidence perfectly. The attempted intimidation had been recorded from multiple angles, leaving no room for legal ambiguity. But as Mike watched the police cars pull away, he knew this was just the beginning. Razor's words echoed in his mind, something bigger coming. The Road Reapers had been testing defenses, gathering intelligence. Today's confrontation would have consequences. Lucy approached as the lot began returning to normal, coffee pot in hand. That was quite a show, she said, refilling Mike's cup. But they'll be back, won't they? Yes, Mike watched the last police car disappear around the bend. And next time they won't underestimate us. Question is, what are they really after? What's worth all this coordination, this level of professional involvement? The morning sun had burned away the mist, but new shadows were gathering at Rusty's Junction. 3 bikers had learned a hard lesson about choosing their targets, but Mike knew from experience, sometimes the first battle is just a prelude to a bigger war. The aftermath of the morning's confrontation brought more questions than answers. As Mike Sawyer sat in Lucy's office reviewing security footage, the deeper implications of Razor's operation began to emerge. The Road Reapers' leader was still in custody, but his words about something bigger nagged at Mike's combat-trained instincts. Ray Chen had arrived from Detroit with a stack of incident reports that painted a disturbing picture. "Look at this pattern," he said, spreading photos across Lucy's desk. Each hijacking targeted specific components: high-end electronics, precision machinery parts, custom manufacturing equipment. They're building something. The security footage from the morning's incident played on Lucy's ancient computer monitor, showing the professional movements of the Road Reapers and their Iron Legion allies. Mike studied their formations, recognizing military-grade tactical training. "Got something interesting," Big Jim entered, still wearing his grease-stained jacket from helping fix Danny's rig. "Ran some background on our friend Razor. Real name's James Morrison. Ex-military contractor, specialized in logistics and supply chain operations. Did work for some big private security firms." Mike's phone buzzed with a message from his Special Forces contact. "Razor's got connections. Just tried to access his service record. It's classified. Someone's protecting him." Lucy poured fresh coffee as they digested this information. Sheriff Thompson called. "They're holding Razor and his two buddies, but pressure's coming down from above to release them. Someone's pulling strings." Through the office window, they could see the Iron Legion riders who'd escaped maintaining surveillance from the highway. They'd adapted their tactics after the morning's failure, staying just outside local jurisdiction while keeping eyes on the truck stop. "There's more," Ray said, pulling up satellite images on his tablet. "Remember those warehouses showing activity? Cross-referenced them with property records. They're owned by shell companies, but I traced the paperwork. All lead back to a corporation called Techfront Industries." The name triggered something in Mike's memory. Techfront. They were in Afghanistan. Private contractor handling specialized logistics for military operations. Had a reputation for making problems disappear. Big Jim whistled low. "So our biker friends are working for a private military corporation? What's valuable enough to justify that kind of operation?" Ray's tablet pinged with an alert. "Just got word from Detroit. Someone tried to access our shipping manifests. Professional cyber attack, targeting specific routes and cargo listings." Mike studied the map they'd created, marking recent hijackings and Road Reaper sightings. "They're not just hitting random targets. Look at the pattern. They're acquiring components. Specialized parts that could be assembled into..." "Into what?" Lucy asked, noting the concern in Mike's expression. "Manufacturing equipment. Industrial-grade machinery with military applications. The kind of setup you'd need to produce specialized hardware off the books." The office door opened as Tommy, the young driver from the previous night, rushed in. "Just got word from Pete at the hospital. He remembered something else about his attack. Said they weren't just after his cargo. They were looking for something specific. Some kind of prototype component." Mike's phone lit up with another message from his Special Forces contact. "Techfront's been on intelligence radar. Suspected of setting up black sites, underground manufacturing operations. Whatever they're building, it's off the grid for a reason." Lucy's landline rang, the insurance company again. "They're canceling our coverage," she reported after hanging up. "Said we're now classified as high-risk location. This goes higher than just a few bikers." Through the window, they watched more trucks arrive, drivers who'd heard about the morning's confrontation coming to show support. The trucking community was mobilizing, but they were up against something bigger than local troublemakers. "We need to think bigger," Mike said, his tactical mind mapping scenarios. The Road Reapers were just the visible part. Professional operators don't expose themselves without reason. They wanted us focused on the bikers while something else was happening. Ray's tablet showed new alerts, more cyber attacks probing shipping networks, testing digital defenses. They're mapping the whole supply chain, every route, every delivery, every component, building a complete picture of cargo movements. Big Jim pointed to fresh motorcycle activity on the highway. "Got more company coming, different patches this time? Looks like they're calling in other clubs." Mike watched the new arrivals through the window, noting their professional positioning. "They're not just gang members. Look at their formation, their communication pattern. These are trained operators using biker gangs as cover." The sun climbed higher over Rusty's Junction as the implications of their discovery sank in. What had started as three bikers trying to intimidate a truck driver had exposed something far more dangerous: a corporate military operation using America's highways for an unknown but clearly sinister purpose. The evening brought new tensions to Rusty's Junction. Mike Sawyer sat in his Kenworth, watching TechFront's forces establish their presence. The private military corporation had abandoned subtlety after the morning's confrontation, their professional operators now openly displaying their capabilities while the autumn wind carried a chill of approaching conflict. Through his side mirror, Mike observed their tactical teams moving with military precision. Black SUVs patrolled the access roads while motorcycles from various gangs, all operated by trained professionals, maintained perimeter security. The message was clear: they were done playing games. The way they established overlapping fields of fire, maintained communication protocols, and positioned their assets spoke of extensive military experience. "Shadow, you copy?" Big Jim's voice crackled over the secure channel. "Got movement at all entry points. They're setting up a containment grid. Professional stuff. Overlapping fields of view, multiple layers of surveillance. These boys know their business. Looks like former special operations procedures." Mike keyed his radio, his combat experience recognizing the tactics from his own military days. "Roger that. They're preparing for something big. Keep our people back. Let them think they've got us pinned down. Watch their rotation patterns. They're setting up for a major operation." Ray Chen's voice came through the encrypted line. "Just intercepted some chatter. TechFront's moving a major shipment tonight, something they call Project Echo. Multiple convoy routes all converging on their warehouse network. The encryption they're using is military grade, but I managed to crack parts of it. Whatever they're moving, it's big enough to warrant presidential-level security protocols." Inside the diner, Lucy maintained normal operations, but every customer was a trusted member of their growing resistance. Veterans and experienced drivers positioned themselves strategically, ready to respond if TechFront made a move. Each person had been carefully vetted, their military or law enforcement background verified through Mike's extensive network of contacts. "Got more intel on Razor," Tommy reported through the radio, his voice tense with urgency. "He's out of custody, company lawyers got him released, but here's the thing. He's not calling the shots anymore. TechFront's brought in their own command element, spotted some serious operators, the kind of guys who don't officially exist. One of them was wearing a Blackwater tattoo, old-school private military contractor." Mike watched a new vehicle enter the lot, a modified command truck disguised as a commercial delivery van. The way it positioned itself, the professional security detail, this was senior leadership arriving to oversee the operation personally. He recognized the setup from his Special Forces days. Mobile command center with satellite uplink capabilities, probably running a full tactical operations center inside. "They're getting bold." Lucy's voice was tight with concern as she approached Mike's truck, her boots crunching on the gravel. "Just got visited by corporate lawyers. They're trying to buy the truck stop, offering 3 times market value. Said it would be better for everyone if we cooperated with Progress." The way they said it, it wasn't just an offer, it was a warning. Mike's tactical assessment was grim. TechFront was escalating, bringing in serious resources to secure their supply chain. The morning's resistance had forced them to reveal more of their operation than planned, and now they were moving to eliminate the threat. He counted at least 20 professional operators in the lot, with more arriving by the minute. His phone buzzed with a message from his Special Forces contact. "Satellite shows major activity at TechFront's warehouses. They're consolidating components, moving equipment. Whatever they're building, it's nearly operational. Thermal imaging shows power consumption consistent with industrial-scale manufacturing. This is bigger than we thought, brother." Through the gathering darkness, more vehicles arrived. Unmarked vans carrying tactical teams, motorcycles operated by professional infiltrators using gang patches as cover. TechFront was establishing a military-grade containment zone around Rusty's Junction, transforming the quiet truck stop into a fortified operational hub. "They think they can lock down an entire community," Big Jim observed, his Marine training evident in his tactical analysis. But they don't understand what they're really fighting. These corporate boys might have the fancy gear and training, but they've never faced a community that stands together. Ray's laptop revealed the larger pattern, its screen casting a blue glow in the darkening cab. TechFront's operation stretched across multiple states, using America's trucking routes to move components for their secret manufacturing program. Rusty's Junction had become a critical checkpoint in their supply chain, one they couldn't afford to lose. The data showed a complex network of shell companies, hidden facilities, and compromised officials. "Got movement on the West Access." Tommy's voice was urgent over the radio. "Large convoy approaching. Looks like they're bringing in heavy equipment, professional security detail, multiple chase vehicles. These aren't regular truckers. They're military transport specialists, same kind we used to see in combat zones." Mike watched the convoy's lights appear on the horizon, cutting through the gathering dusk. This was it. TechFront's major play. They needed to secure this route for their operation, and they were done with subtle approaches. The precision of their movement, the coordination of their security teams. Everything screamed high-level military operation. The company's tactical teams moved with practiced efficiency, establishing security positions around the truck stop. Their coordination spoke of extensive military training. These weren't ordinary private security forces. Each operator knew their role, maintained precise fields of fire, and established overlapping coverage of all potential approach vectors. "They're trying to box us in," Lucy noted, watching the deployment through the diner's windows. "Cut off our options before making their final move. Classic military containment strategy." But Mike saw something else, an opportunity. TechFront's confidence had made them predictable. Their professional operators were skilled, but they were following standard tactical protocols. And sometimes, as he'd learned in special forces, the best way to counter superior forces was to let them think they had control. "All units, maintain position," he broadcast over their secure channel. "Let them think they've got us contained. Sometimes the best trap is the one your enemy thinks they're setting. Watch their patterns, note their rotations. When the time comes, we'll show them why community matters more than corporate muscle." Night had fallen completely over Rusty's Junction as Mike finalized preparations with his team. Inside Lucy's diner, now transformed into an impromptu command center, veterans and experienced drivers gathered around maps and surveillance feeds, each bringing their unique expertise to the developing situation. "TechFronts deployed their full tactical element," Big Jim reported, marking positions on the lot's layout. 30-plus operators, all ex-military. They're running standard containment protocols, overlapping coverage, staggered patrols, communication checkpoints. Ray's laptop displayed real-time feeds from hidden cameras they'd positioned earlier. Their command vehicles up and running, intercepted some encrypted chatter. They're coordinating multiple convoys, all converging on our location within the next 2 hours. Mike studied the tactical display, his special forces training recognizing the patterns. TechFront had established textbook military control of the area, or so they thought. What they didn't know was that every trucker still in the lot was a veteran, each rig strategically positioned for what was coming. "Project Echo's moving," Tommy's voice came through their secure channel. 5 convoys, different routes, all heading this way. Heavy security on each. Looks like they're finally moving the main components. Lucy watched another black SUV roll into position. Just got word from Pete at the hospital. He remembered something else about his attack. Said they were checking serial numbers against a specific list. Whatever they're building, every piece has to be exact. Mike's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from his old unit. "Satellite confirms movement. Multiple convoys approaching from different vectors. But here's the interesting part. They're running ghost trucks too, trying to hide their real cargo among legitimate shipments." Through the diner's windows, they could see TechFront's operators conducting final security sweeps. Their movements were precise, professional, exactly what Mike had expected. They were following standard military protocols, which made them predictable. "Got the last pieces in place," Ray reported, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Every rig in the lot is broadcasting dummy transponder codes. When their convoys arrive, they won't be able to tell our trucks from theirs." Big Jim pointed to the tactical display. They've got us surrounded, but their formation has gaps. Standard blind spots in their coverage. They're expecting us to try breaking out, not breaking in. Mike nodded, seeing the pattern emerge. That's their weakness. They're thinking tactically, not personally. They don't understand what this place means to people. Lucy's landline rang, another corporate lawyer making threats disguised as offers. But while TechFront focused on legal pressure, they missed the subtle movements happening right under their noses. Every trucker who'd left the lot earlier had spread the word, and now hundreds of veterans and drivers across 3 states were quietly converging on hidden staging areas. First convoy's 20 minutes out, Tommy reported. They're running dark, minimal lights, communications blackout, professional stuff. Mike watched TechFront's operators adjust their positions, preparing to receive their precious cargo. They'd established complete control of the visible approaches, but they hadn't bothered checking the old logging roads that local drivers had used for decades. This was it, TechFront's major play. They needed to secure this route for their operation, and they were done with subtle approaches. The precision of their movement, the coordination of their security teams. Everything screamed high-level military operation. The company's tactical teams moved with practiced efficiency, establishing security positions around the truck stop. Their coordination spoke of extensive military training. These weren't ordinary private security forces. Each operator knew their role, maintained precise fields of fire, and established overlapping coverage of all potential approach vectors. They're trying to box us in, Lucy noted, watching the deployment through the diner's windows. Cut off our options before making their final move. Classic military containment strategy. But Mike saw something else, an opportunity. TechFront's confidence had made them predictable. Their professional operators were skilled, but they were following standard tactical protocols. And sometimes, as he'd learned in special forces, the best way to counter superior forces was to let them think they had control. All units, maintain position, he broadcast over their secure channel. Let them think they've got us contained. Sometimes the best trap is the one your enemy thinks they're setting. Watch their patterns, note their rotations. When the time comes, we'll show them why community matters more than corporate muscle. Night had fallen completely over Rusty's Junction as Mike finalized preparations with his team. Inside Lucy's diner, now transformed into an impromptu command center, veterans and experienced drivers gathered around maps and surveillance feeds, each bringing their unique expertise to the developing situation. TechFronts deployed their full tactical element, Big Jim reported, marking positions on the lot's layout. 30-plus operators, all ex-military. They're running standard containment protocols, overlapping coverage, staggered patrols, communication checkpoints. Ray's laptop displayed real-time feeds from hidden cameras they'd positioned earlier. Their command vehicles up and running, intercepted some encrypted chatter. They're coordinating multiple convoys, all converging on our location within the next 2 hours. Mike studied the tactical display, his special forces training recognizing the patterns. TechFront had established textbook military control of the area, or so they thought. What they didn't know was that every trucker still in the lot was a veteran, each rig strategically positioned for what was coming. Project Echo's moving, Tommy's voice came through their secure channel. 5 convoys, different routes, all heading this way. Heavy security on each. Looks like they're finally moving the main components. Lucy watched another black SUV roll into position. Just got word from Pete at the hospital. He remembered something else about his attack. Said they were checking serial numbers against a specific list. Whatever they're building, every piece has to be exact. Mike's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from his old unit. Satellite confirms movement, multiple convoys approaching from different vectors. But here's the interesting part. They're running ghost trucks too, trying to hide their real cargo among legitimate shipments. Through the diner's windows, they could see TechFront's operators conducting final security sweeps. Their movements were precise, professional, exactly what Mike had expected. They were following standard military protocols, which made them predictable. Got the last pieces in place, Ray reported, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Every rig in the lot is broadcasting dummy transponder codes. When their convoys arrive, they won't be able to tell our trucks from theirs. Big Jim pointed to the tactical display. They've got us surrounded, but their formation has gaps. Standard blind spots in their coverage. They're expecting us to try breaking out, not breaking in. Mike nodded, seeing the pattern emerge. That's their weakness. They're thinking tactically, not personally. They don't understand what this place means to people. Lucy's landline rang, another corporate lawyer making threats disguised as offers. But while TechFront focused on legal pressure, they missed the subtle movements happening right under their noses. Every trucker who'd left the lot earlier had spread the word, and now hundreds of veterans and drivers across 3 states were quietly converging on hidden staging areas. First convoy's 20 minutes out, Tommy reported. They're running dark, minimal lights, communications blackout, professional stuff. Mike watched TechFront's operators adjust their positions, preparing to receive their precious cargo. They'd established complete control of the visible approaches, but they hadn't bothered checking the old logging roads that local drivers had used for decades. Remember, Mike broadcast over their secure channel, these aren't just gang members anymore, these are trained operators. They'll react with military precision to any threat. That's why we're not giving them anything to react to. Not until it's too late. Ray's laptop pinged with new intel. Just cracked more of their encryption. Project Echo isn't just weapons manufacturing, it's something bigger. They're building some kind of automated production system. These components they're moving. It's like nothing I've seen before. The night air carried the distant sound of heavy trucks approaching. TechFront's convoys were getting closer, their precious cargo almost within reach. Their operators moved with increased purpose, establishing final security positions. All units check in, Mike commanded, receiving confirmations from veterans and drivers hidden throughout the area. Each response represented years of military experience, local knowledge, and most importantly, complete commitment to protecting their community. Lucy watched the tactical display, noting how TechFront's forces had positioned themselves exactly as Mike had predicted. They think they're in control, she observed. They have no idea what's really happening. That's their biggest mistake, Mike replied, checking his watch. They saw a truck stop and thought they could take it by force. They forgot that some things can't be taken. They have to be earned. Community, loyalty, trust. You can't buy those things with corporate money or enforce them with tactical teams. The first convoy's headlights appeared on the horizon, and TechFront's operation entered its final phase. But as their forces focused on securing their precious cargo, they didn't notice how the community they'd tried to intimidate had transformed into something far more dangerous. A unified force of veterans and drivers ready to show them why some battles can't be won with superior firepower alone. The operation began with precision timing as TechFront's convoys approached Rusty's Junction. Mike watched from his Kenworth as the first heavy trucks appeared, their running lights cutting through the darkness. TechFront's tactical teams moved with military efficiency, establishing final security positions around their planned cargo transfer point, their movements precise and practiced. First convoy entering the perimeter, Big Jim reported through the secure channel. 5 trucks, 3 escort vehicles. Just like we expected. They're running standard military convoy protocols, lead vehicle sweeping for threats, rear security maintaining tactical spacing. Mike observed the professional operators directing the incoming trucks, their movements betraying extensive military experience. Each hand signal, each radio call, spoke of years of tactical training. All units hold position, he commanded. Let them think they're in control. Watch their patterns, note their rotations. Ray's voice came through the encrypted line. Second and third convoys approaching from the east. They're running a complex logistics pattern, trying to hide their real cargo among dummy shipments. I'm picking up scattered communications. They're using military-grade encryption, but their patterns match special operations protocols. Through the diner's windows, Lucy watched TechFront's operation unfold. Their command vehicle had established a tactical operations center, coordinating the multiple convoys converging on their position. Professional security teams maintained overlapping fields of fire, their focus entirely on external threats. The night air hummed with tension and diesel fumes. "They're so busy watching the perimeter," Mike noted. "They don't realize we're already inside their security zone. Classic military oversight. So focused on external threats, they miss what's right in front of them." The plan they developed was elegant in its simplicity. While TechFront focused on controlling access points, veteran drivers had positioned their rigs throughout the lot, each broadcasting falsified transponder codes that matched the incoming convoy signatures. Every truck was a potential Trojan horse, and TechFront's operators had no way to tell friend from foe. "Cargo transfer beginning," Tommy reported from his observation post. "They're moving components from the secure trucks. Wait, something's wrong. They're doing detailed inspections, checking every serial number against digital manifests. These guys are thorough. Military procurement level verification." Mike's tactical assessment shifted. TechFront's operators were being more careful than anticipated. Through his side mirror, he watched their security teams methodically verifying each component, their flashlights illuminating serial numbers and manufacturing marks. Nothing was being left to chance. "They're paranoid," Ray observed through the secure channel. "These parts must be exactly what they need for Project Echo. No substitutions, no alternatives. I'm scanning their verification protocols. They're matching against a classified database. Whatever they're building, every component has to be perfect." Lucy's voice carried tension. "Mike, they're starting to question some of the drivers. Running ID checks, cross-referencing credentials. Their security teams are using advanced biometric scanners, military-grade identification systems." "Steady," Mike broadcast to all units. "This is why we planted our people in their convoy teams earlier. Let the documentation hold up under scrutiny. Remember your covers, maintain your roles. These operators are trained to spot inconsistencies." The night air hummed with diesel engines as more trucks arrived. TechFront's operation had transformed Rusty's Junction into a military-grade logistics hub, their professional operators maintaining strict security protocols. The parking lot lights cast harsh shadows across the scene, creating a surreal landscape of moving vehicles and armed personnel. "Fourth convoy approaching," Big Jim reported, his voice tense with anticipation. "But something's different. They've got senior personnel with this one. Looks like project leadership coming to oversee the transfer. Black Suburban, diplomatic plates, private security detail. These aren't your regular operators." Mike watched a group of suits emerge from the latest convoy's lead vehicle. These weren't tactical personnel. They were TechFront executives, their expensive clothes and confident bearing marking them as senior leadership. Their presence confirmed the importance of tonight's operation. "Ray, you getting this?" Mike keyed his radio, watching the executives confer with their security teams. "Already on it. Facial recognition running against federal databases. These guys aren't just corporate, they've got government connections, military contracts, classified projects. One of them was involved in black site operations overseas. Whatever Project Echo is, it's got serious backing." The execution had to be perfect. One mistake, one premature move, and TechFront's operators would lock down the entire operation. But Mike had learned in Special Forces that sometimes the best position was right in the enemy's blind spot, hiding in plain sight while they searched the shadows. "Final convoy approaching," Tommy's voice carried urgent intelligence. "This is it, the main component shipment. Whatever Project Echo is, the key pieces are in those trucks. Security's even tighter on this one. Elite operators, electronic countermeasures, the works." Mike gave the signal. Across the lot, veteran drivers began their carefully choreographed movements. Each rig adjusted position slightly, creating corridors and blocking lanes in ways that would only become apparent when it was too late. The trap was closing, one piece at a time. The trap at Rusty's Junction snapped shut with military precision. As TechFront's final convoy entered the perimeter, Mike Sawyer gave the signal that set everything in motion. "Execute Phase 2. His command crackled through the secure channel, triggering a sequence they'd rehearsed countless times in preparation for this moment. In perfect synchronization, veteran drivers across the lot engaged their air brakes. The sound of dozens of trucks locking down created a wall of noise that momentarily confused TechFront's operators. But the real genius was in the positioning. Each rig had been carefully placed to create an interlocking barrier system, cutting off strategic sections of the lot. The positioning had been calculated to military specifications, using tactics Mike had learned in urban warfare scenarios. West section secured, Big Jim reported. Their escape routes are blocked. East and south corridors locked down. They're compartmentalized exactly as planned. Through his mirrors, Mike watched TechFront security teams react with professional urgency. Their training showed in how quickly they assessed the situation, but their tactical response was exactly what he'd anticipated. They moved to establish a defensive perimeter around their precious cargo, falling back on standard military protocols, predictable, by-the-book responses that played right into the trap. "Ray, start the broadcast," Mike commanded, initiating the next phase of their operation. Instantly, every screen in TechFront's command vehicle lit up with live feeds. Ray had hacked their secure communications, flooding their systems with surveillance footage of their entire operation. Every component transfer, every security measure, every piece of Project Echo, all documented and streaming to multiple federal agencies. The technical infiltration had been months in the making, placing hidden cameras and sensors throughout the area. "They're scrambling," Ray reported, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Trying to shut down their networks, but it's too late. Everything's been transmitted. FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, they're all seeing this in real time. Got confirmation of receipt from 3 separate federal task forces." The corporate executives who'd arrived to oversee the transfer were now shouting orders, their carefully maintained composure cracking under the pressure of exposure. Their security teams moved to intervene, but found themselves confronted by an unexpected sight. Mike's former Special Forces teammates emerging from concealed positions, their military bearing unmistakable. Each veteran was positioned to neutralize key tactical points in TechFront's defense. "Perimeter teams compromised." Tommy's voice carried satisfaction. "Local law enforcement moving in now. The real ones, not their bought and paid for allies. State police tactical units are securing the outer perimeter. They're completely boxed in." Lucy watched from the diner as TechFront's operation collapsed into chaos. Their professional operators, realizing they were surrounded, began implementing emergency protocols. But Mike had anticipated this too, having studied their standard operating procedures through weeks of surveillance. "All units, pattern Delta," he broadcast. The veteran drivers responded instantly, their rigs moving in coordinated sequences that further subdivided the lot into controlled sectors. Each movement was precisely calculated to separate TechFront's forces, disrupting their ability to mount an organized response. The maneuver, adapted from military convoy operations, effectively created a series of isolated pockets. "Command vehicle isolated," Ray confirmed. "Their tactical network is down. I've locked them out of their own systems. They're running blind and their backup communications are being jammed. Even their satellite uplinks are compromised." Mike stepped down from his truck, moving with the calm confidence that came from knowing every aspect of the plan was falling into place. TechFront's senior personnel were now effectively trapped between rows of trucks, their security teams cut off from them by the carefully orchestrated movements of veteran drivers who understood military tactics as well as they did. "Federal response teams are 10 minutes out," Big Jim reported. "State police have blocked all major routes. SWAT teams are setting up containment positions. Nobody's getting out with those components. We've got air support incoming, 3 helicopters from different agencies." The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air as law enforcement aviation units arrived. Spotlights swept across the lot, illuminating TechFront's exposed operation in harsh white light. The scene looked like something from a military operation, which in many ways it was, just not the one TechFront had planned. "Project Echo documentation secured," Ray announced triumphantly. "Got everything, shipping manifests, technical specifications, financial records. Their entire black project is exposed. Internal communications, offshore accounts, government contracts. It's all being uploaded to secure federal servers right now." Mike watched as TechFront's executives realized the full extent of their situation. Their automated weapons manufacturing program, carefully hidden behind layers of corporate secrecy and private security, had been undone by the very community they'd tried to intimidate. Their faces showed the dawning recognition that they'd catastrophically underestimated their opposition. All that tactical training, Lucy observed, joining Mike as police units began arriving in force, and they never saw it coming. Too busy looking for external threats to realize the real danger was right in front of them. They made a classic military mistake, Mike replied, watching federal agents begin securing the prototype components. Got so focused on their objective that they forgot to understand their opposition. Thought they were dealing with simple truckers, never realized they were facing veterans who'd seen their kind of operation before. Sometimes the best camouflage is being underestimated. The lot was now filled with law enforcement vehicles, their lights mixing with the helicopter spotlights to create a surreal display. TechFront's operators, recognizing the futility of resistance, were surrendering with professional discipline. Their training showed even in defeat, organized, methodical, by the book to the end. Through it all, Mike felt a deep satisfaction, not just in stopping Project Echo, but in showing why some communities couldn't be bought, bullied, or broken. 3 bikers had started this, thinking they could intimidate a truck driver. Instead, they'd exposed a corporate conspiracy and learned a valuable lesson about choosing their targets. Federal task force incoming, Ray reported from his laptop. They're particularly interested in those prototype assembly units. Initial analysis shows these components were meant for autonomous weapon production. Looks like TechFront's Black Project days are over. They'll be answering questions about this for years. As dawn approached Rusty's Junction, Mike watched the aftermath of their operation unfold. Sometimes, he reflected, the biggest victories come not from superior force or tactical advantage, but from understanding what truly matters: community, loyalty, and the unshakable bonds between people who stand together against those who would threaten their way of life. The aftermath of the operation brought waves of change to Rusty's Junction. Dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as federal agents processed the scene, cataloging evidence and securing TechFront's exposed operation. Mike Sawyer watched from his usual spot in the diner as Lucy served coffee to a mix of truckers, veterans, and law enforcement officials who had been working through the night to secure the scene. Final counts coming in, Ray reported, his laptop displaying streams of data across multiple windows. 37 arrests, including 12 corporate executives and their entire tactical team. Project Echo components secured. Turns out they were building automated weapons manufacturing facilities across 3 states. The sophistication of their operation is staggering. These weren't just assembly lines. They were designing next-generation autonomous weapons platforms. The federal task force commander, a stern-faced woman named Martinez, approached Mike's table. Her tactical gear contrasted with the casual atmosphere of the diner, but her respect for the community was evident in her demeanor. "Your intel was solid," she confirmed, sliding into the booth. "We've been tracking TechFront for months, but couldn't get inside their operation. Your community just handed us everything we needed. The level of documentation is unprecedented." Through the windows, they could see the convoy trucks being processed under the brightening sky. Each component, each piece of Project Echo, was being documented and secured for transport to federal facilities. The scale of TechFront's conspiracy was becoming clear in the morning light, and it was far larger than anyone had initially suspected. "Got word from Detroit," Big Jim announced, joining them with fresh coffee that steamed in the cool morning air. "Similar operations being rolled up all along their supply routes. Your friend Pete's already identified 3 more corporate players involved in the scheme. They had tentacles in every major manufacturing center east of the Mississippi." Lucy's Diner had become a temporary command center as federal agents coordinated raids across multiple states. Laptops and communication equipment covered tables usually reserved for breakfast plates, while maps and surveillance photos plastered the walls. The trucking community's network was proving invaluable, providing intelligence about TechFront's operations that no amount of surveillance could have uncovered. "They're singing like canaries," Ray added, monitoring law enforcement communications through his encrypted setup. TechFront's executives are turning on each other, trying to cut deals. Found connections to foreign military contracts, illegal weapons research, corporate espionage. This goes deeper than anyone suspected. Some of these weapons designs were meant for sale to hostile foreign powers. Mike's phone buzzed constantly with messages from his special forces contacts. Similar operations were being exposed nationwide, each revelation leading to more arrests. The web of corruption TechFront had built was unraveling rapidly, exposing years of illegal activities and corporate malfeasance. Medical teams finished with the 3 original bikers, Tommy reported, fresh from speaking with local authorities. Razor and his boys are cooperating fully. Turns out they were just the visible part. TechFront had dozens of similar teams operating across the country, each one using local gangs as cover for their professional operators. The morning brought more trucks to Rusty's Junction, not corporate convoys this time, but regular drivers showing support. Rigs from across 3 states filled the expanded lot, their drivers joining the growing community. What had started as a stand against intimidation was transforming into an organized network of mutual protection. State police want to set up a permanent task force, Martinez explained, spreading documents across the table. Using your network to monitor shipping routes, protect critical cargo. Your people proved something important here. Sometimes the best security comes from community, not corporations. We're looking at establishing similar programs nationwide. Lucy refilled coffee cups as she listened to federal agents coordinating with drivers. The trucking community's knowledge of routes, patterns, and unusual activities was proving invaluable to law enforcement. Veterans and experienced drivers provided insights that no amount of technological surveillance could match. Got the preliminary damage assessment, Ray announced, scrolling through financial reports. TechFront's operation is completely exposed. Their stock is crashing, their contracts are being suspended, and their corporate partners are running scared. Nobody wants to be associated with illegal weapons manufacturing. The financial fallout alone will be in the billions. Mike watched the sunrise complete its journey, casting long shadows across the lot where just hours before, a major corporate conspiracy had been exposed. The scene was still bustling with activity. Federal agents processing evidence, tactical teams securing components, and drivers coordinating to maintain security. You know what really got them? Big Jim observed, watching federal agents process the last of the evidence. They were so focused on their tactical superiority, their corporate power, that they never understood what they were really fighting. Couldn't see that some things can't be bought or bullied. They thought money and muscle were enough. Lucy's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Other truck stops calling for advice, asking how to organize their own communities against similar threats. The spirit of resistance that had started at Rusty's Junction was spreading like wildfire across America's highways, creating networks of mutual support and protection. As the morning progressed, more details emerged about the true scope of TechFront's operation. The automated weapons manufacturing system they'd been building wasn't just about profit. It was about power, about controlling who had access to next-generation military technology. Their corporate conspiracy had threatened not just local communities, but national security itself. We've got similar operations being exposed in 6 other states, Martinez updated them, reviewing real-time reports. Your community didn't just stop one conspiracy, you gave us the template to identify and shut down dozens more. This is going to change how we approach corporate security threats. The morning continued to unfold with new revelations. Each hour brought reports of more arrests, more exposed operations, more corporate conspiracies unraveling. 3 bikers had started this chain of events thinking they could intimidate a truck driver. Instead, they'd triggered something much larger, a reminder that true strength comes not from tactical teams or corporate resources, but from communities standing together against those who would threaten their way of life. 1 year after the events at Rusty's Junction, Mike Sawyer pulled his Kenworth into the familiar lot, now expanded and improved. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement as other trucks arrived, their drivers part of a community that had grown far beyond its original bounds. The changes were visible everywhere, from the enhanced security systems to the new communication center built onto Lucy's diner. Hard to believe it's been a year, Lucy said, bringing coffee to Mike's usual booth. The diner had become more than just a truck stop. It was a symbol of what communities could achieve when they stood together. Maps on the walls tracked shipping routes and potential threats, while encrypted communications equipment hummed quietly in the background. Ray Chen, now heading a joint task force between private security and federal agencies, spread his latest reports across the table. TechFront's collapse was just the beginning, he explained, pulling up data on his laptop. We've identified and shut down 12 similar operations in the past year. Corporate conspiracies, weapons manufacturing schemes, illegal tech development, all exposed thanks to the network that started here. Through the windows, they could see Big Jim conducting a briefing for new drivers. The veteran program they'd established had transformed America's highways, creating a system of mutual protection and support that corporations couldn't infiltrate or corrupt. Got the latest numbers, Tommy reported, joining them with fresh intelligence. Over 200 truck stops have implemented our community defense protocols. Former military contractors are finding legitimate work protecting shipments instead of hijacking them. Even some of the reformed biker groups are helping maintain security. Mike's phone buzzed with updates from his expanded network. What had started as a local resistance to corporate intimidation had evolved into something much larger, a nationwide movement of drivers and veterans working together to protect America's supply lines. Federal Task Force wants to expand the program, Ray added, showing new deployment maps. They're using Rusty's Junction as a model for community-based security initiatives. Corporate threats didn't disappear after TechFront, but now we've got early warning systems and rapid response teams in place. Lucy's Diner had become a training center, teaching other communities how to organize and protect themselves. The walls were lined with photos, drivers who'd stood against corporate corruption, veterans who'd found new purpose protecting the roads, communities that had chosen to stand together. Remember those 3 bikers? Big Jim chuckled, joining them after his briefing. Razor and his boys? They're working legitimate security now, helping train drivers to spot and report suspicious activity. Sometimes the best defenders are the ones who used to be on the other side. The morning brought a steady stream of trucks, each driver part of the new network. They shared intelligence, reported unusual activities, and maintained the community bonds that had proven stronger than corporate power or tactical training. Project Echo wasn't the last attempt, Ray noted, reviewing recent incidents. But every corporate scheme we've uncovered followed the same pattern, underestimating the strength of united communities. They keep thinking money and muscle are enough. They never learn. Mike watched a group of veteran drivers conducting security sweeps, a routine that had become standard across America's highways. The protocols they'd developed at Rusty's Junction were now being taught at transportation hubs nationwide. Got something interesting, Tommy announced, checking his tablet. Remember those warehouses TechFront was using? They've been converted into legitimate manufacturing centers run by a cooperative of local businesses, turning corporate corruption into community opportunity. Lucy's phone rang with another call for assistance, another community looking to implement their defense protocols. The spirit that had defended Rusty's Junction had spread, inspiring others to stand against corporate intimidation. State police report just came in, Ray said, reviewing the latest data. Cargo theft down 60% since we implemented the network. Corporate infiltration attempts dropped even further. Turns out the best security isn't about fancy technology or tactical teams. It's about people watching out for each other. The morning sun climbed higher as more drivers arrived, each bringing news and updates from different parts of the country. The community that had started at Rusty's Junction now stretched across thousands of miles, connected by shared purpose and mutual trust. You know what really changed? Big Jim reflected, watching the activity in the lot. It wasn't just about stopping one corporation or exposing one conspiracy. We showed people they don't have to stand alone. That real strength comes from standing together. Mike nodded, remembering that first confrontation with 3 bikers who thought they could intimidate a truck driver. They'd never imagined they were starting something that would transform America's highways, turning isolated communities into a unified network of mutual protection. Got the latest training numbers, Tommy reported. Over 5,000 drivers have completed the veteran-led security program, each one becoming part of the early warning system, each one ready to stand with their community. The legacy of what happened at Rusty's Junction lived on in every driver who chose to stand against corruption, every community that refused to be intimidated, every veteran who found new purpose protecting America's roads. What had started as a simple act of resistance had become a movement, proving that some battles are won not by superior force, but by unbreakable community bonds. As the morning continued, Mike watched the next generation of drivers learning from veterans, carrying forward the lessons paid for in courage and determination. The spirit of Rusty's Junction had become a beacon, showing others that when communities stand together, no corporate power could break them. 2 years after the events at Rusty's Junction, a new kind of network had spread across America's highways. What started with a stand against 3 bikers had sparked a transformation that no one could have predicted. Mike Sawyer reflected on this as he watched a training session at the newly established Highway Protection Center, built where TechFront's command center once stood. Latest intelligence report, Ray announced, joining Mike with fresh data. Corporate infiltration attempts down 80% nationwide. The networks become too strong, too coordinated. They can't find weak points anymore. His laptop displayed a map of connected communities stretching coast to coast, each point representing a stronghold of resistance against corporate corruption. Lucy's Diner had evolved into something remarkable, a command hub for the Eastern Seaboard's protection network. The old counter where 3 bikers once tried to intimidate a trucker now hosted daily briefings for security teams and federal task forces. Got an interesting development, Big Jim reported, fresh from a coordination meeting. Those automated weapons factories TechFront was building, communities have converted them into training centers, teaching defense protocols, security procedures, community organization, turning their tools against them. Through the windows they could see the next generation of protectors training, veterans teaching tactical awareness to young drivers, former corporate operators sharing intelligence techniques, reformed bikers demonstrating how to spot and report suspicious activity. Remember how it started? Tommy mused, monitoring the nationwide communication grid they'd established. 3 bikers thinking they could push around a Special Forces veteran. Now look, we've got organized response teams in 48 states, coordination with federal agencies, international partnerships. Mike's phone buzzed constantly with updates from the expanded network. Communities sharing intelligence, reporting threats, coordinating responses. The bonds forged at Rusty's Junction had become a template for resistance against corporate power nationwide. Corporate strategies have changed, Ray noted, reviewing threat assessments. They're not trying brute force anymore. Can't use intimidation when communities stand together. Now they're learning what we knew all along. You can't break a united front. The morning brought a convoy of trucks from across the country, each driver part of the new protective network. They carried more than cargo now. They carried the spirit of resistance, the knowledge that no corporate power could stand against communities that chose to unite. Got something you should see, Lucy called, bringing up footage from a recent attempt at corporate infiltration. They tried setting up a similar operation in Texas. Within hours, our network had identified them, tracked their movements, and coordinated with local authorities. Shut down before they could establish a foothold. The transformation went beyond security. Communities had learned to work together, share resources, protect each other's interests. The highways had become corridors of unity rather than targets for exploitation. Federal assessment just came in, Tommy reported. Our model's being studied internationally. Other countries looking to implement similar community-based protection networks. What started here is going global. Mike watched a group of new recruits learning from veteran instructors. The program they'd developed combined military experience, local knowledge, and community commitment. It was proving more effective than any corporate security system. Cultural shift's been remarkable, Ray observed, showing trend analyses. Corporations used to think they could buy or bully their way through any community. Now they're learning about real strength, the kind that comes from people standing together. The training center buzzed with activity as another class graduated from the protection program, each participant returning to their community with knowledge, skills, and most importantly, connections to the larger network. Got reports from the West Coast, Big Jim announced. Another corporate scheme exposed, tried to set up a black market tech operation. Network identified it within days. When communities work together, nothing stays hidden for long. Lucy's Diner had become a symbol of resistance, attracting visitors from around the world studying their model of community defense. The story of how 3 bikers chose the wrong truck driver had become legend, inspiring others to stand against corporate intimidation. Latest security assessment, Ray shared, pulling up new data. Traditional corporate tactics failing across the board. Can't infiltrate when everyone's watching out for each other. Can't intimidate when communities stand united. They're learning the hard way, some things can't be bought or broken. The morning sun illuminated the transformed landscape of Rusty's Junction. What had once been a simple truck stop had become a beacon of hope, showing others that resistance was possible when people chose to stand together. You know what really changes them? Mike reflected, watching the next generation of protectors train. When they realize money and muscle aren't enough. That real power comes from community, from trust, from people choosing to stand together against those who'd try to break them. The legacy of their resistance continued to grow, spreading across highways and communities, showing others that corporate power could be confronted and defeated when people united in common cause. What started with 3 bikers choosing the wrong target had become a movement, transforming America's highways into protected corridors of community strength. As training continued and new members joined the network, the spirit of Rusty's Junction lived on, a reminder that some battles are won not by superior force or tactical advantage, but by the unbreakable bonds of united communities standing together against any threat that dared to challenge them. The sun set on another day at Rusty's Junction, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed to reflect the transformation this place had undergone. Mike Sawyer stood by his Kenworth, watching the next generation of drivers and protectors going about their routines. The memory of those 3 bikers who'd started it all felt like a lifetime ago. The autumn wind carried the familiar scents of diesel and Lucy's cooking, mixed with something new, a sense of pride and purpose that had become part of the very air. Sometimes the smallest conflicts reveal the biggest truths, Lucy said, joining him with 2 cups of coffee. Her diner had become more than just a stopping point. It was a symbol of what communities could achieve when they stood together. The walls inside now displayed photos and news clippings documenting their journey from simple truck stop to nationwide movement. Who'd have thought 3 bikers could spark something this big? Ray emerged from the communications center, tablet in hand, his face illuminated by the screens that monitored shipping routes across the country. Final statistics for the year, he reported, scrolling through comprehensive data. Corporate infiltration attempts down 90%. Black market operations virtually eliminated from major shipping routes. Communities stronger than ever. We're seeing cooperation between groups that used to be rivals, sharing intelligence, protecting each other's interests. The transformation's been remarkable. Got something interesting, Big Jim called out, approaching with fresh intelligence from his network of contacts. Remember Razor and his Road Reapers? They're running legitimate security training now, teaching other reformed groups how to protect communities instead of threatening them. Full circle, you might say. Their experience on both sides of the law is proving invaluable for identifying potential threats. Through the evening light, they watched trucks arriving and departing, each driver part of the network that had grown from that first stand against intimidation. The spirit of resistance that began at Rusty's Junction had spread across the nation, showing others that no corporate power could stand against united communities. The parking lot had been expanded 3 times to accommodate the growing number of drivers seeking training and connection. You know what they never understood? Tommy reflected, joining the group with fresh reports from the nationwide communications grid. It was never about the fight. It was about showing people they didn't have to stand alone. That real strength comes from standing together. Every week we get calls from new communities wanting to join the network, looking to build something stronger than corporate influence. Mike nodded, remembering that first confrontation in vivid detail. 3 bikers had thought they could intimidate a truck driver, never imagining they'd spark a movement that would transform America's highways. They'd chosen the wrong target, but in doing so, they'd revealed something powerful. The unbreakable strength of communities united in purpose. The training center bustled with activity, even as night approached. Veterans shared their experience with new drivers, while reformed troublemakers taught others how to spot and prevent the kind of threats they once posed. The knowledge being passed down wasn't just about security. It was about building and maintaining the bonds that made communities strong. Latest assessment from the Federal Task Force, Ray added, checking his encrypted messages. They're using our model for community protection as a template nationwide. Not just for highways anymore. Ports, railways, even urban neighborhoods are adapting our methods. What started here has become something nobody could have predicted. As night fell over Rusty's Junction, the lights of trucks stretched out along the highway like a river of stars, each one carrying not just cargo, but the spirit of resistance that had begun here. The lesson was clear. Some battles are won not by force or intimidation, but by the bonds between people who choose to stand together against any threat. In the end, Mike said, watching the next shift of protectors take their positions, they taught us something important, showed us that real power isn't about muscle or money. It's about community, about trust, about people looking out for each other. Every driver who passes through here carries that message forward. Lucy surveyed the transformed truck stop, her eyes reflecting the pride of someone who'd watched a movement grow from its first spark. The corporate types never understood what they were really fighting, thought they could break us with money or muscle, never realized that some things can't be bought or bullied, they have to be earned through trust and loyalty. The legacy of what happened at Rusty's Junction lived on in every driver who chose to stand against corruption, every community that refused to be intimidated, every person who found strength in unity. What started with 3 bikers choosing the wrong truck driver had become something far greater, a reminder that when communities stand together, no force can break them. Got word from the international conference, Ray mentioned, checking one final report. Delegations from 12 countries studying our protection network. They're seeing the same threats in their regions, looking to build similar community-based defenses. What began here is spreading beyond our borders. As the stars emerged above Rusty's Junction, the spirit of resistance burned bright in the hearts of those who'd learned its lessons. The highways remained protected not by corporate power or tactical teams, but by the unbreakable bonds of communities united in common cause. 3 bikers had started this story, but countless others would carry its message forward, a testament to the enduring power of people standing together against any who would dare to threaten their way of life. The truckers of America's highways had learned a vital truth. Sometimes the wrong target turns out to be exactly the right one to spark a revolution of unity and strength. And as night settled over Rusty's Junction, that truth continued to spread, carried forward by every driver who understood that real power comes not from intimidation or force, but from the unbreakable bonds of united communities. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.